Hi guys, and welcome to the Stephen King Sematary Club. George is now completely disgusting. His skin is sloughing off, he has open wounds and they're seeping, and he smells really bad. So in the last section, we knew that George was calling from Thad's house, and now we get the story of how George got to Thad's house and how he got inside. And you feel a tiny bit sorry for him. He didn't want to exist. Thad made him exist. Quote, "What right did Beaumont have to children, to a beautiful woman? What right exactly did Thad Beaumont have to live in the light and be happy, while his dark brother, who had made him rich and famous when he would otherwise have lived poor and expired in obscurity, died in darkness like a diseased mongrel in an alley?" Page 306. So this is about survival. George is a terrible person, but he didn't make choices that led him that way. He is what Thad created. And then Thad didn't intentionally bring him into existence, but he did. And so now this guy is the result of Thad's imagination, and it's not really his fault. So I do feel a little bad for him. He has a confrontation with the police outside of Thad's house, and it is an absolute bloodbath. This scene, it burrowed into my brain, and I have remembered it in the back of my mind ever since. And for a minute, I thought we weren't going to get to that part in this book, because I was like, well, maybe I made some of it up, because I haven't read this in so long. But he gets the cops out of the car by pretending to be in trouble. And the first one out, he cuts him up, throws him at the other one, knocks that guy off balance. And then the most horrifying thing happens. And this has just stuck with me all these years, and I imagine it's even worse for a guy to read this. If you have a weak stomach, skip ahead. Quote, "Stark sliced upward, splitting the crotch of Eddings's beige trooper uniform, splitting his scrotal sack, drawing the razor up and out in a long, buttery stroke. Edding's balls, suddenly untethered from each other, swung back against his inner thighs like heavy knots on the end of an unraveling sash cord." Page 309. The imagery has just never left me. That is so descriptive, so horrifying, and now I can't unsee it. So Stark gets into the house, the police protection is now gone, and it's just Liz and the two kids. And he calls her Beth, because he is like Thad, but not like Thad, so Liz is the nickname that Thad calls her, and then Beth is what he calls her. She and Stark have a lot of interesting back and forth. She hates him. She wants to kill him. He is surprisingly still strong, even though he is decomposing and he's just deteriorating at a fast rate. But he is still crazy strong. And the worst part is the twins see him as their uncle. They like him. They are reminded of their father, and they treat Stark as such, even though he is gross at this point. Thad manages to lose his police detail, and he waits for Rowley. He calls him and asks if he can borrow his car, and he waits for him at a junkyard. And while he's there, a whole bunch of sparrows descend on the junkyard, and he tells them to go get George Stark, and they fly off. And Rowley is like, I need to know, I'll give you my car, but I really need to know what happens, how this shakes out after it's over. Just promise me you'll tell me that. Rowley gives Thad a bird call. So Thad has this little weapon at his disposal. So now everything's kind of reaching the climax, and we have George and Liz heading toward the summer house. Thad is heading toward the summer house. Ellen gets a couple calls, one from the doctor who operated on Thad when he was a kid, and one from a guy who says that he saw a black tornado coming out of his barn where he stores cars, and he didn't have a black tornado in his barn. and that is Stark's car. So Alan is finally starting to believe in Stark because he hears about how Thad ate his brother in the womb, and he hears some new information that we hear from Dr. Pritchard is that a whole bunch of sparrows attacked the hospital right before Thad woke up after his surgery. George, Liz, and the kids are at the house. Alan shows up. He thinks he's being sneaky. He parks really far away, but George still knows that he's there. There are thousands of sparrows, and Alan sees them and knows that something is off. And as he gets closer to the house, the sparrows aren't there anymore. There's a big line of demarcation where they won't cross, at least not yet. And they keep talking about George Stark's unlined palms. If he doesn't have lines on his palms, why does he have fingerprints that match Thad's? That seems like a continuity error to me. So Thad finally arrives. The sparrows have increased in number, and he is driving up to the house, and they park for him, and then they close back after the car passes. So he is kind of in control of these sparrows. Thad is ready to teach Stark how to write, and they sit down. They have like a mirror image situation where they're in Thad's study, which has no windows to it, and they each have a little notebook and their own pencils, and they have, this whole exercise. They keep the twins in the room because George wants leverage, and they start writing, and as they're writing, Thad feels a transference to George, but Thad can still control things. So as George is writing and he's getting going and he's really proud of himself, Thad is making him write sparrow over and over, incorporating it into sentences. Thad is starting to drain and get sores on himself as George starts healing. And George doesn't realize what's going on. He doesn't realize that he is writing all this stuff about sparrows. Thad picks his moment and he calls the sparrows, and he uses the bird call that Raleigh gave him, and he also writes some stuff out on paper. The birds attack the house. They come in, they carpet everything. It's said that they were 18 inches deep. Liz and Alan are trying to get upstairs to get the children and see what's happening with Thad. And dead sparrow bodies are being crushed, and they're flying at them and attacking them and getting trapped and fluttering and freaking out. And it's actually very intense. But at least it's not bugs. It's not as disturbing to me as if it had been bugs. The sparrows start eating Stark. Quote, "The sparrows were trying to lift him up. They were trying, and very soon, when they had reduced his body weight enough, they would do just that." Page 422. So eventually Stark is lifted away and carried to the underworld, and he is screaming horribly the entire time, and he is obviously suffering. These sparrows are ripping at his guts and eating him while he's alive. One live sparrow remains after this is done, and George has been carried off, and it pecks Thad as if to say, don't fuck around with the afterlife. This is your warning. Don't do this again. Behave. And then Alan and Thad light George's car on fire, roll it into the house to produce a cover-up for the weird situation with all the dead birds and the ruined house. And that's pretty much it. We don't know what price Thad has paid for calling the birds. We don't know what he tells Raleigh, if he tells him at all. And Alan mentions that he feels kind of weird around Thad now, like he doesn't like him anymore. They were kind of on the way to becoming good friends, and now Alan is kind of creeped out by him, and he fears that the same will happen with Liz. They will stay married, but she will feel a little disgusted by Thad. So I love this book still. I think it's a good representation of Stephen King with, him and Richard Bachman. I like that it's just a pure down and dirty book. There's not much to it. There aren't many characters. The premise is pretty simple, yet it's an interesting thought experiment. And, I see Thad as a stand-in for Stephen King, and I see Liz, like any strong woman in the Stephen King book, as kind of a stand-in for Tabitha. And I don't know, I like the simplicity and the violence of this book. It's just, it's a good, entertaining read. It's actually a good summer read. I feel like summers are made for books of little substance and biographies. I recommend it. I know it's, according to several of you, not people's favorite, and I would not put it as one of my favorites, but I do like it. I do enjoy it. It does make me wonder, because I like Evan Hunter, and he had a whole bunch of books that he wrote under the name Ed McBain, and they were about a police precinct, and it never appealed to me before, but now I'm kind of wondering if I would like those types of books. So maybe I'll give it a chance, because I do like the stuff he writes as Evan Hunter. So, I don't know. I might look into that. I don't remember, it was like Precinct 86 or 89 something. So, let me know, do you like this book? Is it one that you skip? Is it one that you read once and that's enough? Are there any scenes in it? Especially the death scenes, they're just so vicious. They really stand out.